Hey guys, Roxabox90 here with a double experiment video. On the one hand, I'm using screen recording software for the first time. Thank you, MTG McQuacks, for recommending this program to me. Let's see if it works. And also, I want to do a deck building, not series, maybe mini-series, where I show you guys the deck, the baseline. This is like how I start, what I'm thinking about when I'm building the deck. Just the cards, mishmash of cards thrown together with my thoughts on why I'm doing what. And then I'd like for you guys to comment on it, and hopefully I'll put up maybe some gameplay with it and show you guys how it evolves, and then hopefully it can be feedback and see the deck shape into something. And eventually I'll have a full-on deck tech of the deck and explain why it works and what it does and so on. So I hope it's a cool idea, and come along with the ride. So this is a blue-white deck. I've done blue-white decks before. This one I want to change up a little. Usually I do aggro control, where I did for a while Snapcaster Delver, Geist St. Traff, Phantasmal Image, and Titan with a lot of counter magic. And inevitably you play stuff, counter your opponent's stuff / bounce their opponent's stuff, and just end up overwhelming them. So I like the aggro part because I like aggro, and I like the fact that blue has some aggro to it. It's a very powerful color because it supports itself. It's an aggro, has enough aggro, but it also supports the aggro. And the white, of course, is great with blue. Blue and white tend to be two sides of the same coin. They work really well together. So that's what I'm doing. But I want to change it because I didn't want counter magic, since now you have Cavernous Souls around, and there are lots of other blue-white decks that are running counter magic, or really not so much anymore. But I want to kind of remove a lot of the counter magic and stick more towards manipulating the tempo of the deck. I wanted a deck that acted as a lockdown. It locks down what your opponent's doing. So I guess tempo control. I don't know all the names in Standard because I don't watch a lot of the pro stuff. I just kind of, based on my general experience and other decks I've seen, I try to do it. So you guys can feel free to correct me if I make some sort of silly mistake with my wording or whatever. Feel free to do that. No problem. So anyway, so I want to make the deck at tempo control, pretty much, is what I want it to be. So let's look at the deck list. So for lands, when I build these decks, what I do is I first say, okay, well, we need some duals if we have. So Seachromes would normally be chosen. I don't have my full playset, and I honestly want to try it out first without Seachromes. Seachromes will rotate out. I'd like this deck to hopefully be viable for at least until Ravnica, and maybe even through the beginning of Ravnica. So if they end up rotating out, then I'm not going to be able to use them anyway. I also don't have a playset anymore, so I'm working out. I might get another one back, but if I don't, then I may not use them at all. So we're going to use 4 Glacial Fortress. So they're blue-white, makes sense. 3 Evolving Wilds, because there's a bunch of cards that have 2 white or 2 blue. So being able to know early on which one you're kind of aiming for, it's really helpful. 3 Evolving Wilds. And then we have 8 islands and 6 plains. So that's 21 lands. It might actually be too many, ironically enough, because there's so much draw in this deck. Draw and controlling what you're drawing. So there might actually be too many lands, but 21 is usually a safe number to start with, and then I can take out or put in depending on what I need. So you let you guys know about that. Let's go to the creature side of things. We have 3 Phantasmal Images. I've heard to run 4 from friends of mine, but honestly, with 3, I've always found it's enough. You really don't need the 4th, because if you get stuck with 2 images in hand, yeah, they're really good, and you can use them, but then you remove the opportunity for another one. And I don't have a 4th one. So the 3 seem to run pretty well in my other blue-white decks, so I'm going to be running 3. And of course they're great because they just copy Titans and other big creatures like the Wolfear Silverheart, which is now a really big deal. So I love the fact that Phantasmal Image hits play and acts as one of them soul bonds, and that's really cool. So I like Phantasmal Image. Then 2 Geist of St. Traff. The push is not completely aggro. So the Geist, you might want to have more, might want to have less. Once again, I need your guys' input for that and play testing. But I found 2 Geist is usually enough if you're not trying to just be full-on aggro. If you're trying to be a full-on Geist Blade deck, or you're trying to be a Delver Rush with Geists as support. If you want that sort of thing, then of course you need more Geists. But in this deck, the idea is if you land him because he's hexproof and you're preventing your opponent from having their creatures untapped, or whatever, you're tapping down all your opponent's creatures, he should be able to get through without being blocked, and having just one on the field is fine. You don't have to get 2 in your hand or 3 in your hand, since it's hard enough to deal with him. One Sun Titan, I'm debating Sun Titan because, actually I don't know why I'm debating him. Well, I mean, I'm debating him because he's a 6 cost drop, and he doesn't really do much for the deck in terms of tempo, besides for the fact he puts stuff back from your graveyard, so he can let you reuse guys. But he doesn't affect your opponent's tempo at all. He just gives you stuff. So right now I'm running 1 of him. You might recommend more than 1. Just recommend and tell me why. But so far I'm going to start with 1. Then we have 4 Delver of Secrets, because I still like the aggro part, and we have a ton of spells. Instants and sorceries, we have I think 20 in the deck. So Delver is still very viable, and I'm going to run him. But of course you can always suggest otherwise, but you all know why he's good. 4 Snapcaster, same reason. There's a gazillion instants and sorceries in the deck, and he's always great for flashing back stuff. But he's also, yeah, so he's really good. I really like him. Then for spells, we have 21 right now currently. 4 Feeling of Dread. Feeling of Dread, I know everyone's going to say, oh, you just picked it out because that Canadian pro used it. It's like, yes and no, mostly no. I played against this. We had Innistrad drafting since Innistrad's pre-release, and my friend used Feeling of Dread. He got 2 or 3 in his packs, and he used it, and it pissed me off. It's like, this card is so good. It's ridiculous. You tap down your opponents, and you flash back. It's amazing. So obviously it runs the problem if you're playing against decks that run, the human decks now with Cavern of Souls have Geists and Invisible Stalkers. It doesn't really do anything because they have Hexproof. But against decks that run Titans and stuff, it's super powerful. What I also like about it is that if you end up, we're going to get to Thought Scour in a minute, but if you end up self-milling yourself, then Feeling of Dread allows you flashback. So it doesn't feel like it's wasted. So Feeling of Dread is a really great, I think, tempo card, especially since it's an instant. Then we have 4 Think Twice, kind of the same thing for tempo. It lets you draw a card, but if you mill it yourself, you can flashback it and you draw. I mean, everyone knows Think Twice. I put 1 Dissipate in. I actually was considering 2 Dissipates as backup against, say, Day of Judgment or any sort of Wrath spells or Destroy spells, but I'm still concerned about running a bunch of counter magic, so I decided to stick with 1. But you guys can, of course, suggest one or the other. These are just my thoughts. It's at least a counter spell that if you end up drawing it, you don't feel bad drawing it because you can hold on to it to deal with an opponent's later spells. 4 Thought Scour, of course, once again, both with Snapcaster use and the fact that it's a mill card, so it mills off 2 either from yourself or your opponent, but also draws you a card. So it's good for tempo, I think. And then we have 4 Vapor Snag. Everyone runs Vapor Snag. It's stupid not to. If I was running against a deck, once again, that's like Geist and Invisible Stalker Blade, then maybe I would switch it out. But, I mean, come on. Even in those decks, the chances are they're going to have stuff to bounce back, and it's just so powerful. Ponder is the only non-instant speed spell. It's a sorcery. So I'm unsure if I want to keep them in here because I'm worried they may slow down the deck. But they're so strong. They're such powerful cards that you set yourself up. So I'm worried about not running them. So I think that's going to be more based on playtesting if I want to keep them in or not. And space issues. But of course, give me your thoughts. That's why I'm running it. Planeswalkers, we're running 3 Tamiyo. I think that the pro guy running 4 is overkill, and I don't have the budget for that anyway. I might be able to get 3 if I'm lucky. So the 4th I don't think is even necessary. You don't want to draw 2 of her in your hand. Opening hand, that's just stupid. The 3 I think is enough because you want to be able to get her, especially with your Ponders and Think Twices and Thought Scours, but you don't want to be overwhelmed with her because she's not. You can't drop down a bunch of them. She has the Planeswalker Legendary rule issue, but she's just a beast. I love the fact she taps down any permanent, so she can hurt your opponent's lands while you're tapping down their creatures with Feeling of Dread. So I love that. they're -2 to draw a card. Of course, you tap down stuff. They have tokens. You Feeling of Dread, 2 of them, and then they have whatever, or they attack, and you draw a card for each tap creature. It's just a lot of good card draw. And of course, you can, if you have too many cards in your hand, you can discard the flashback ones, and it's pretty obvious. And then the -8, if you ever get that off, it's just an amazing spell. It lets you reuse all your cards. It's crazy. It's also really cool with Thought Scour. I didn't notice this, but I saw a video on it. That if you Thought Scour yourself with her, and they go into the graveyard, you'll get it back in your hand. So you basically draw 3 off of her -8. If -8's out, Thought Scour is 1, draw 3, which is Ancestral Recall, which is insane. Obviously, you probably won't get her -8 off, but with the amount of tap down stuff going on, chances are she'll be pretty well protected. And the risk of running is because if they have burn spells and red deck wins, then now that Cavern of Souls is preventing a lot of mana leak and dissipate going on, there might be a lot of burn out there, and she can die to burn, obviously. But I'm not overly worried, so she's really good for this deck. And to back her up, Gideon Jura is also great with tap down stuff, and he's a great protector for Tamiyo. So right now I'm putting in 2, I think. I think 2 is probably enough, but we'll see. I mean, obviously you all know what Gideon does by now, where you can force them to all to attack him, and he'll be hopefully big and powerful and won't die. You can use Tamiyo / your other cards to tap down stuff and then destroy it with him. So they play a Primeval Titan, you tap it down and destroy it with Gideon. That's pretty cool. And of course his 0 is great. If you tap down your opponent, it's just doing damage. It's great. So I'm running 2 so far. Give me your thoughts if you think I should run more or not, and so on. Anyway, sideboard. So of course the deck is over 60 cards because I'm still figuring out what I'm going to use, and the sideboard's of course over. And I don't know exactly what to run for sideboard because I am not playing a lot in FNM right now. So let me know what you guys think based on what you see going on in Standard. But anyway, so 3 Terminus, because with the amount of drawing going on, chances are you can Miracle it if you need to. It also deals with those pesky Geists and Invisible Stalkers, and of course tokens. So it's a really nice Wrath, and the amount of draw you're going on, you can usually Miracle it. And given your tempo control, you instant draw during their turn, you Miracle it during their turn, you'll have your mana open. So it's almost taking the room of counter magic. Runechanter Pike to deal with blue-black control stuff. I think it's going to blue-black control is going to slowly move back and not be as powerful in terms of its counter magic. But with the Delver, of course, Runechanter Pike is phenomenal, so those are an option. Ghost Quarters, I don't know how many to run, but I'm pretty sure with Cavern of Souls out there that I might want to run a couple of them if I'm going to consider putting in more counter magic. If I end up leaving out the counter magic in total, for the most part, then I probably won't run them. But once again, feedback. Disperse I like, especially against decks that run swords, because it gets rid of a non-land permanent. So they play a sword, they equip it, you disperse it back to their hands. They wasted 5 mana or whatever. So I really like the disperse option instead of the Vapor Snag, but it does cost 2, so it's not as easily used. But we'll see. Anyway, I'm just putting there just as an option card, so let me know. Dungeon Guy is kind of the same thing. Taps down your opponent's creatures, hopefully permanently as long as he's out. And he's also a pretty solid flyer in terms of his 3/3, his 3 power for 4. And your Taxing Probe is also, it's not an instant, and it only draws me 1. I like the fact that I may switch out the Ponders for Taxing Probes or vice versa because it lets me see the opponent's hand. But once again, playtesting and feedback from you guys, that's kind of what I'm going for here. So this is the very, very rough, I was thinking about it over a couple days, and I threw this together from it. Let me know what you guys think in terms of number choice, in terms of card choice, the whole deal. And hopefully you can make this deck really awesome. And then maybe I can play test against some people online too. If you guys have, if you have an interest in doing that in the summer, then feel free to let me know. So anyway guys, Roxabox90 here, signing out. Please comment below and let me know how I can make this deck awesome. See you guys next time.